Hello and welcome back to the Stories of Northern Life podcast, brought to you by the Sault Ste. Marie Museum. I'm your host, Nicole, and today it is once again October, so that means it's more time for spooky stories and some true crime. So first off, we have the story of the last hanging that took place in the Sault. So the very last man to be hung in the Sault was a man by the name of Fred Montgomery. And so here is the tale of his crime. On October 9th, 1957, Fred Montgomery and his son, Rodney Montgomery, robbed a bank in Blind River, and during that robbery, they killed the bank manager, J.J. Walter Bridges. And today I'm going to be reading you the tale of their crime, their capture, and trial. And these are all taken from a series of news articles that were in the Sault Star. So first off, we have the article published November 12th, 1957, and this is where they first name Fred and Rodney Montgomery as the two suspects. Warrants have been issued for the arrest of a father and son for the murder of Blind River bank manager J.J. Walter Bridges. Crown Attorney Ian Monroe said today that the Blind River police hold murder warrants for Fred Montgomery, 41, and his son Rodney Montgomery, 17. The Montgomerys are said to hail from Parry Sound area, although they moved around quite a bit. Inspector T.S. Crawford of the Ontario Provincial Police at the Sault was on the case. So here they had a description of Fred Montgomery, aged 41, height 5'6", weight 145 pounds, complexion ruddy, eyes brown, hair browning and thinning. Build medium, teeth worn short, mustache hairline, speech moves lips a little while talking and speaks with a slight drawl. Occupation, truck driver and laborer. Scars left side of head, 2 scars on left index finger, and little finger on right hand is stiff. Now here's Rodney Montgomery. Rodney Montgomery, age 17, height 5'10", weight 145 pounds, complexion light with dark shading around eyes and nose, has acne pimples, eyes dark brown, hair dark, build slim, teeth good, occupation printer's apprentice. Scar over right eye, likes to dress in flashy clothes. Bridges, a prominent Blind River citizen, was shot down and killed almost instantly on the morning of October 9th. The two men pushed their way into the Royal Bank branch shortly after 9 a.m., using clerk Byron Timmermans as a shield. Almost as soon as they entered the building, Bridges came to the door out of his office and was shot down before he had the chance to utter a word. It was shown later that a .44-40 rifle had been used in the slaying. Soon afterwards, the bandits were frightened off. When they were making their getaway, they fired shots at Norman Solomon, whose car they stole. The car was later found abandoned at the end of the Granary Lake Road, some 15 miles north of Blind River. An intensive manhunt throughout the area failed to trap the hunted men, and it was believed they may have fled by using a series of stolen cars. Fingerprints were taken off Solomon's car and off an auto that had been left abandoned on the street by the desperados. However, police declined today to say whether or not these fingerprints figured in the identification efforts. The bandits who killed Bridges failed to get a single penny for their efforts. They were frightened off before they had a chance to get the open vault. And so these descriptions were passed out in what they call circulars all around Ontario and even west. As they didn't know where the two were heading, they spread them everywhere in hopes that someone might recognize them. And it seems that this did help. So here we have an article from November 18th, 1957, so just a few days later. The two men arrested Sunday in Saskatchewan will be arraigned on a charge of murder soon after they reach the Sault. This was revealed today by Inspector T.S. Crawford of the Ontario Provincial Police Headquarters. The inspector stated that the men will be arraigned on the murder charge soon after they arrive here in the Sault, underlined the police conviction that there is no doubt about their identity. And so here we have another one from December 3rd, 1957, and it says, Fred Montgomery and his son Rodney faced charges in the slaying of Royal Bank manager J.J. Walter Bridges October 9th, were remanded for a preliminary hearing in Blind River December 11th. The pair remained composed during their brief appearance in court when Crown Attorney Ian Munro asked for the remand. They will be held under constant guard in the district jail of Algoma until they appear in Blind River for the hearing. And then we go to December 19th, 1957. Here we start to hear some of the testimonies, and here we have the testimony from former teller Archie McKay. He said that after the shooting, he recognized Fred Montgomery as the man who came to the rear of the bank and ordered him at gunpoint to open the cash drawers in the vault. And then later on in the article, it says both father and son sat calmly in the prisoner's box while the hearing was in progress. Neither one showed any emotion, although Fred Montgomery seemed warm and there appeared to be precipitation standing on his face and forehead. And then here on January 25th, 1958, it seems that they have set a trial date for April 14th. And at this time, they were planning on trying the two together, though it would sort of jump back and forth as to whether or not they should try them together in one case or separately, and in the end they decided to try them as one. And here we have an article from April 17th, 1958. So this is right when the trial was starting. It says here, Blind River Theater owner Norman Solomon testified today that Fred Montgomery was the man who dragged him out of his car and fired a shot at him within minutes after the slaying of bank manager J.J. Walter Bridges last October 9th. Solomon was giving evidence at the trial for murder of Montgomery, 43, and his son Rodney, 17, at the special assizes of the Ontario Supreme Court in the Sault. Then it later goes on and says McKay was within a couple of minutes of the bank bandit, forcing him at gunpoint to try to open his safe compartment. He realized the man was Fred Montgomery. McKay said that he told police the man's identity at the time. He was unable to identify the younger man. So McKay, as we remember, was the one who originally testified in that early December hearing. And so after a long day of testimony from witnesses, it says that 25 of a possible 73 Crown witnesses had been heard at the close of the trial's third day. So it appears that there were a lot of witnesses and they were moving through them at a pretty good pace. And there was a lot of evidence against them, not only the testimony of witnesses, but there was also fingerprints found in Solomon's car, which did tie to Rodney Montgomery, so the son, and as they committed other crimes along their way, they had another robbery in Timmins later on. All this evidence was compiled together, and so they were both sentenced to hang. And the date of their execution was set for July 15th, 1958. And so this was a pretty quick decision and a pretty quick date for the execution. And as we go along here, May 2nd, 1958, so this is right after, saying that the defense for the younger Montgomery, Rodney, weren't going to seek an appeal, but they were petitioning the Minister of Justice for a commuted sentence or for clemency, basically asking, can he be given, say, life in prison rather than be giving the death sentence. Though the father did put out several appeals, and it was taking time for the courts to go through them. And we do see here on July 11th, 1958, so just a couple days before Fred Montgomery was set to hang, it says 17-year-old Rodney Montgomery has been saved from the gallows by a decision of the Canadian Cabinet. The youth has been commuted to life imprisonment in the Kingston Penitentiary. But the fate of his father is as of yet undecided. And here we are on July 15th, 1958. We do see that his appeal was dismissed, and it says right here, Fred Montgomery, 42, was hanged at 12:15 this morning for the murder last October of Royal Bank manager J.J. Walter Bridges, 50, of Blind River during an attempted bank holdup. Attended by only necessary officials at the district jail, the condemned man was pronounced dead 15 minutes later by jail physician Dr. J.E. Gimby. And so there we have the death of Montgomery. But there is still a little bit more that I have found in our story. So with our story, where we're at right now is that Rodney Montgomery is serving his life sentence in prison, and Fred Montgomery is now the last man to be hung at the district jail. Although a few years later, on August 29th, 1964, I found this really interesting piece of news. So it says here, Algoma bank killer flees Manitoba jail, left dummy in bed. A youth who was convicted of murder in the Sault in 1958 escaped from Stony Mountain Penitentiary in Manitoba today. Rodney Montgomery, 23, is the object of a widespread manhunt around the prison, about 20 miles north of Winnipeg. He escaped this morning while prisoners were being exercised. And so it seems that even after he was in jail and away from his father's influence, he was still finding his way into trouble. He would be later apprehended, but I just thought it was another interesting bit in their story. And now, as we know, Fred Montgomery was the last man hung in our district jail. And so whatever happened to those gallows after? Well, they were removed, and it says here, it was noted on August 12th, 1965, they had this whole write-up titled Gallows Room Now Office for District Jail Matron. And so it says here, the old gallows room at the Algoma District Jail now serves as an office for the jail matron. Pauline Cormier, who is in charge of the female section of the staff, has her office in the area formerly used for the hanging at the jail. Of course, the noose and the trap section of the gallows have long since been removed, so there is no danger that the floor will fall out. Otherwise, her office is much like any other small offices. The gallows were last used in the Sault on July 15th, 1958, when Fred Montgomery was hanged for the murder of a Blind River bank manager. He was buried in an unmarked grave on the jail property. And so this part is interesting. Yes, he was buried in an unmarked grave on the property, but they didn't record where at all. So not only was his name not recorded, but they didn't even record where exactly he was buried. So today, we do know that he's still buried somewhere on the property. We just have no idea where. And since this time, there have been additions made to the jail. So there is some speculation that he might just be under the new addition, or he's even under the new parking lot that's there. So he's somewhere still buried there, but no idea where. And then I found this interesting article here, and this is from April 14th, 1994. So it's just another article talking about the last hanging and the gallows. But there's this interesting part right here that reads, the gallows from the McNabb Street jail where 2 men were hanged were closed and removed to the Ministry of Corrections Quinte Detention Center Museum about 6 or 7 years ago. Lake said the museum is in Napanee, Ontario. So I decided, okay, well, let's look up this Quinte Detention Center Museum in Napanee, which is right near Kingston. There is no such museum. There is a Quinte Detention Center, and there is no detention center museum, no prison museum anywhere in Napanee, but there is the Kingston Penitentiary Museum. So I have emailed them in the hopes that maybe they can tell us where our gallows are. But as of right now, it's also kind of a mystery of where our gallows line ended up. And there are a few stories that we have of our former jail being haunted. And so the jail closed a few years ago, and it has been converted into several other businesses and offices. There's the hairdressers in there. There's one of the EMS paramedic guys. There's even the CEFA, the French Adult Learning Center, who's in there. And from the people who have been in there, who visited or things like that, there are some stories of the place being haunted. And with a body having been lost on the property, it's kind of a little bit of no surprise that it would probably be haunted. So sort of there's the story of the last man that was hung in the Sault and what happened to him, and also what happened to the gallows after they were last used. So I hope you have found this interesting, and next week we will be back with another true crime story. So as always, thanks for listening. Bye.
Have you been to your local museum lately? Visit us at the Sault Ste. Marie Museum, located in downtown Sault Ste. Marie, the one with the big clock tower on the top. Our hours of operation are 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. Tuesday to Saturday. We have 3 floors of exhibits that we constantly work on updating. The whole family is welcome, as we have activity sheets and scavenger hunts with prizes for every kiddo, a discovery gallery full of hands-on learning, and more interactive elements scattered throughout the museum. And don't forget to come say hi and let us know you're a listener of the podcast.